All right, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host, Samantha Studebaker-Carl. I'm broadcasting to you from Indianapolis, Indiana, and I'm here with my good friends Karen and Catherine and Sandy. And today we're going to continue our discussion of the book, Your Soul's Plan by Rober Schwartz. And I think we're in the first chapter still. We've had quite a bit of discussion on this whole concept of what he's talking about in here. But we'll just see where the conversation goes. And for those of you who are watching, there'll be some links below this video if you're watching it on YouTube, where you can find out how to join us in this discussion, because we'd love to have you. The more people, the more, what's the word I'm looking for? The more ideas that we can present to one another, we all learn and grow from that. So we'd love to have you. Okay, so guys, go ahead and jump out and introduce yourselves, and then Karen, you can take it from there. Or Catherine, excuse me. Catherine, you can take it from there.
Oh, how about? Hello. Sandy Root here in sunny, sort of cloudy Miami Beach. Things are starting to open up here, and the beach will open on June 1st. I'm so excited. I guess they haven't opened it up for Memorial Day weekend, because I know they know that people will flock here in groups and go manic. So we have to wait till the Memorial weekend passes. Happy Memorial Day to those who served, and thank you for your service. And looking forward to the discussion, even though I don't have the book yet.
I'm Karen Lohoff in sunny Mesa, Arizona, which is a suburb of Phoenix. And it's in the 90s and we've had a projection of 110 somewhere in the future days that they forecast to. So I'm just going to enjoy what it is now. I did have a thought, Catherine, if you would maybe at the beginning of these meetings that we have on Saturday, just briefly tell us the difference again. You did this in the first meeting, but tell us the difference again between mediums and psychics or whatever. Thanks.
Good morning, everybody. I am here. This is Catherine Clement in Shawnee, Oklahoma. And we are, the weather's just crazy here. It's crazy in Colorado where I used to live, but it's really crazy here. We have a lot of tornadic activity. I'm kind of like right in Tornado Alley. So, and my mom is a storm chaser, a volunteer storm chaser. So we are always have, radios going off, alerts going off. So if she needs to head out to spot something or whatever, so it's always exciting around here. And we were just talking before we started the recording. This book is available on Audible and I believe Kindle as well. But I have the Audible version, but I need to order the book, the actual book itself, especially, because the Audible version, and I guess this is just something with Audible in general, because I've noticed it on several of our books. It's very difficult to figure out where you are in the book. It doesn't, most of them don't have a definite chapter this, chapter that. It just seems to go on and run on somehow. I don't know. Like I can never figure out where I'm at. Next thing I know, I look up and it says I'm on chapter 7 or something. I'm like, what? I thought I was still on the introduction. So, but to just kind of lay the foundation, this book is written with the help of psychics and mediums, and some people aren't familiar with what those are and what the differences are. And it's really, it's not really a black and white thing here, because most people that are, quote, open have multiple gifts. So they may be a psychic and a medium, both, in other words, is what I'm saying. But a psychic tends to either get flashes, visions, audible warnings. Somehow it's like they have this little open window into the future, and they can kind of see into the future a little bit and predict, or some might say they're remembering what's already happened. This is a crazy kind of a universe. And I have to stop here because I want to know, did anybody else see that? I posted it, but did anybody see my post on the where NASA has discovered an alternate universe, like Bizarro World?
Yeah, I saw that you had posted that, and then I'm like, oh, I got to research this. So I'm like looking for the NASA article on it, and then there's a couple of science websites that I look on, and I kind of look through there just to see what are they talking about. But that sounds really interesting. Not too long ago, I saw, or I didn't watch the movie, but I saw a description in a movie that popped up on Netflix or Prime, and it said something about like two star-crossed lovers in upside down opposite worlds or something like that, and it reminded me of that. I'm like, now I'm gonna have to go back and watch that movie just because I want to see, is it like the same kind of concept they're talking about? That's yeah.
So the one thing that I think all of us here on this panel admit to is we really don't know about any of this stuff for sure, right? All we can do is talk about, things that we've read, things that we've heard. We read books together and talk about it, and then add in our personal experiences. And that's as far as we can go. We can't say this is how it is, because nobody really knows how it is, right? Now, to get back to psychics and mediums are people that typically bridge the gap between people who've moved on from this earthly experience, so they can communicate messages from what we would call the dead. I don't really like that word because I don't think we ever die. I don't believe that we die. I think that we just start a new journey, start a new experience probably in a different body. I don't know. Maybe I hope I don't get this body back. Holy shit. But, but who knows. So, but that's the typical definition for medium, is someone who can speak to the dead, sees the dead. And like I said, most people who are open have multiple gifts. So they might be a psychic, they might be a medium. The other group of people that were used in this to write this book were channelers. And channelers are people, gosh, stop, please. Even when I say that word, if you guys knew the response that I get in my body, it's funny, this thing of channelers, and they're speaking to me on an energetic basis right now. Channelers bring forth knowledge from wherever. I can't tell you where it is, who it is. Different ones seem to bring in different entities. I don't really like that word because it has some connotations with like Satanism and stuff. But an entity in my mind is just something unknown, a personality unknown to me. So many of them tend to channel. It's like they are able to just step out of their body for a second and let somebody else come through and talk to you. Now, if you think about this concept, this is basically how the Bible was written, right? They channeled God into the people that wrote the Bible, believed that they were channeling God, and they probably were channeling. I mean, if in our understanding back in those days, if something was audibly speaking to you, you would assume it was God, because who else could just speak to you in your head or your heart? So there's there's different ways of looking at channeling. Like some people look at channeling as something very scary, but I think that most things are channeled. I think that most books are channeled. There's Dan. Hi, Dan. Glad you could join us. Do you want to come on and introduce yourself real quick? All right.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Or we did.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure my computer's still kind of catching up a little bit, so it took me a minute, and I didn't hear anything from you guys, so I was like, can they even hear me? Um, Hi, good morning. My name is Dan Sisek. I'm here in hot Las Vegas, and it's getting warm, and they're expecting us to get into the hundreds. So I'm sure that means for you, Karen, you're probably well above 100 then. Um, Looking forward to getting into this. Sorry, I'm a little late. I just slept really good last night, and I wasn't about to fight it because a lot of mornings I wake up about 3:30, 4:30ish, and it's like I can't go back to sleep. So uh, to get a full night's sleep, it was very nice. So now I'll shut up.
That's awesome. Congratulations for getting a good night's sleep. Um, I also wake up at that 3:30 time period. I think a lot of people do. And there's a couple of theories around that. One of them is uh, more physical based, which is that your liver needs detox, and that tends to be the time of the day that your liver's working. And I see Sandy's giving me the thumbs up there. And then the other one is that tends to be the time when your guides can get through to you, and like the veil is more open at that time, or your body is at a certain space, where it's more receptive. So who knows what it is. Like sometimes when I wake up at 3:30, I'm like, okay, hurry up, give me the message and let me get the hell back to sleep, okay, because I need some sleep here. so so you might, if you find yourself consistently waking up at that time, you might do two things. Ask, okay, what do you want to tell me? And two, work on cleaning up your liver a little bit. So back to channeling. I think so many things are channeled. Like I think books are channeled. I know that my poetry is channeled, and I know that because I can wake up in the middle of the night and write, and then wake up in the morning and find it there. And like I didn't really have anything to do. Like it just comes through. I think that happens with songs. I think it happens a lot with music. I think all this stuff is channeled. So there was a time when I was really skeptical against channelers because, I ran across a few that I did not feel were being genuine. But you can't, and even I need to be remind myself, smack myself in the head once in a while. You can't judge a whole group based on a few. So channelers, mediums, psychics, these were all used in the process of writing this book. And I hope that doesn't put some people off from it. It's possible that it could. Oh, there's Jason. All right. You want to come on and introduce yourself, Jason?
We can't hear you, Jason. You're automatically muted when you jump on the first
Okay.
time. Yeah, there you
There
go.
we go. Okay, I'm sorry. You missed my whole introduction. I'm Jason Roberts. I'm here from St. Pete, Florida. Glad to be here. Really good to see you all today. And glad to be able to make it. So, yeah, what are y'all discussing?
We are discussing your soul's plan, and I was just kind of going over a little bit how this book was written with the assistance of mediums, channelers, and psychics, and the difference between those, and how yeah, and how I was hoping that that didn't put some people off from the book, basically, because, they might make a snap to judgment, because I find it a very fascinating book. When you have an experience, and I can relate this to you from a pain standpoint, when I'm feeling a pain in my body, there gets to be a point where I wonder, am I just imagining this shit? What is going on, really? But then when you read about somebody else that has that exact same experience, it's a confirmation for you. And so in this book, when somebody was curious about because the concept of the book is that we're basically eternal souls that come in, and we live different experiences. But before we come into an experience, we plan very thoroughly and agree, this person's going to take this bad guy role, this person's going to take this good girl role, and we all agree to play these parts in this movie, to make it a simple analogy. Every plan is to move us forward in our understanding, in our compassion, and our love. So all of the, quote, bad stuff is actually good. In fact, those characters need to be especially applauded for their performance, as far as I'm concerned, because they've taken on the hardest roles to play, right? The bad guy. Nobody really wants to be the bad guy that everybody hates. So when you're looking at, world events right now and stuff, and some people may agree or disagree with different things happening or what different people are saying, when you look at it from this aspect, that we all planned this a long time ago as a growth experiment, for lack of a better term, it takes so much of the bite out of it for me. I mean, I don't know if it gives anybody else as much comfort as it does me, but when I start because I can go off the rail, you guys, and when I start going off the rail on something, I can just say to myself, okay, we planned this shit. Everything's going according to plan. And I know it is because I get constant daily confirmations that things are happening like they're supposed to happen. The first story that it talks about in this book is about this woman who goes to work and goes to check the mail, and I think it was a pipe bomb explodes, some kind of bomb explodes. I think it blew off a couple of her fingers, and a pretty dramatic, horrifying experience for this woman. She has this belief that we pre-plan things, and so for her, instead of being, and I'm sure it wasn't all butterflies and rainbows, there's still hard stuff to go through physically and emotionally and all of that. But if at the very core in your heart you believe, I planned this for my own learning and growth, somehow it takes the suffering out of it, for some people. Now, other people may just go into sort of a bit of anger at themselves, like, well, how could I do this to myself? And other people could just be like, totally, oh, hell no, I refuse to believe that I would ever plan such a life for myself. So, obviously there's lots of different ways to look at it, and it doesn't bring comfort to some people. But for me, I don't know how to say it other than suffering is horrible, but not so bad when I know it's serving a purpose, or if it's relieving someone else of suffering. And I've shared before when I asked my guides, why me for some of this pain that I experienced, especially when I was in the throes of it before my last surgery, why me? They very clearly, and this is something I I want to bring up or explain after I tell you what they said, but they very clearly said, because you wouldn't put it on anyone else. And that is so true. I would not put this experience on my worst enemy, no matter what I felt they did to me. I just would not wish this kind of pain on anybody. So I can see myself, you know, up in wherever we go, out there, over there, different universe, reality. I don't know where we go. But I can see me saying, "Oh gosh, no, I'll take that." Like I wouldn't, because they're like, "Okay, so this person's going to experience this, this. And I'm like, "Oh no, please." You know, because I'm a glutton for punishment or something. I don't know why, but I can totally see me doing it. And so it's like as a if you have a child or a friend, you know, and you can take some burden off of them, even though it makes you suffer to do it, the suffering is less because it serves a purpose. I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but for me, it eases my suffering to know that there's a purpose. Now, what I wanted to get back to before I forget, and then I want to open it up and listen to you guys. When your guides speak to you, it is intense. It is, they're very non-emotional. There is, if you're feeling pushed from something and there's a lot of emotion behind it, it's probably not your guides speaking to you. It's probably fear or anxiety or something along those lines, because when guides speak, even if it's in an extremely traumatic situation going on or whatever, when they speak, they are so calm and they have no agenda. Sandy, I see you shaking your head. Can you come on and back me up on this? Like, I don't know how to explain it, but there's such a difference.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because during the lockdown time, I've been opening up my connection, or, you know, trying to connect more to the guidance, because I have all this time now, or had all this time. I'm like, let me see what I can do here to hone my intuition. And so I started talking to my guides, because I know they've been there all my life. Like, there's blips I have where I've had near-death experiences, and I'm like, they saved me. Like, there's something there that saved me, because I should not be here right now. So that's when I started having this sense in I was probably 17 years old, that there's something protecting me. And I had this sense that there were these 3 guides that have been with me all my life. And it's so true what you say. Like, it's, you know, our mind can go into these places like, okay, guys, help me. And then, you know, you're feeling anxiety and you might hear things, but it can be your own mind saying these things. And they have no, like you said, there's no emotion to what they're saying. It's complete clarity. Like, it's just like, oh, okay, you know, like it comes through in such a clear way that, you know, it's not like, it's not from you or someone else. It's yeah, it's hard to explain. It's clear, like you just know, like your intuition, or it's a gut feeling, like what they're saying to you. Because yeah, I have those moments. I'm like, are the guides or me thinking? And if there's an anxiety in my belly or something, I know it's me thinking. I had it just last week. I was meditating, and for like half an hour, and all these things were coming in, and it was complete clarity. And I'm like, they're here, thank you. You know, because it comes from when you're not thinking, when you're not in your head. If you're completely just, I mean, yeah, you can be thinking if you're, I don't know how to explain it, but it's just, you just know. And it was, as you're speaking about also, these things that we go through, that it's like, why am I putting myself, why am I going through this? I didn't choose this, I'm having a similar experience because of the lockdown. My income, like I guess most of us, is like a mess, and I had some loans and credit that were accruing, and I just started freaking out about how am I going to pay this stuff, and all this stuff, and I feel like that's a cycle through my life, like these money struggles, like big money struggles, and looking back to how it started with my parents and even past lives, like why can't I get out of this freaking money shit? And that's also when I meditated last week, it was like the guides were there and they gave me clear answers on this things I could do. They were just popping in like, like, do that. There's all these other options. You can do this, and I'm like, oh, and after I meditated, I'm like writing it all down, and I'm like, yeah. So, and they're there for you. They love you. They love us. They, if you open up that channel to your guides, they want you to be your best, and they're if you really open up that communication, they will guide you on the best path. And it's funny when you were talking about books being channeled too, because I always have this desire to write, but I don't like to write. So I'm like, please, somebody just tell me what to write. Just give me the information, download it, and I'll write it on paper. So I think that's true, that so many books are channeled. Yeah, so I'll stop there for now.
So the best
I was
way,
gonna
I
jump.
guess, that I can. Oops, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna go jump. I was gonna jump out and throw something out there because um, I've never tuned into the channeling or anything like that, but I have my ways. I think of how I believe that God speaks to with me or through me and something like that. And and I've said before, I think a lot of it comes through me with music and stuff and things like that. But um, it's funny you hit on a subject, Sandy, that lately has been kind of in my head over the last few months, and it's strong and it's there, and the desire is there. I just don't know how to go about it or what I would say. But I have a book in my head that I would love to write and put out, and yet, um, and I think it would be very beneficial, and it would open a lot of people up to some things and help them understand some things better about, for lack of a better word, our relationship, God, universe, infinite intelligence, the spirit out there, and I'll just put it in that loose term. Not that I necessarily, but and it goes back to, like, I think the whole fear thing, and yet you're getting these promptings or you're getting these feelings, and it's to help us move forward so that we do move forward in that sometimes maybe that best path, but then again, because maybe we don't understand some of these things that are set in motion for whatever before we were in existence here on earth, that might be, part of even part of that idea. But for me, my problem is I have a hard time where I would, you know, make the decision to put myself in a position where I would honestly and truly harm other people in a way that some of these people do things. The only way I can see myself defending and doing it, anything like that, is in protection for people I love and very close to me, or people in general that are in a position that can't protect themselves. And if I'm there and I can, then to do that. So that's where some of my issues with this thought process are. I'm not necessarily tuning it out, and I'm not necessarily not willing to go through the journey and see what I come through, or ultimately get. But that's where some of my, and hopefully this will help me understand maybe even that thought process of somebody else better, so I can have a little more uh, humanity towards them and understand that, you know, there might be more underlying than what I even think sometimes.
There's a lot more underlying that none of us know about. And I think, and especially in our current state of affairs, I think we have to have enough faith in whatever you have faith in and give everybody the benefit of the doubt. Everybody. Even the people that are coming out saying things that you don't like, just for the sake of your own mental health and non-suffering, just give them the benefit of the doubt that in the big picture of things, everybody is doing what they need to do to promote the betterment for all of us. And no matter how, and this goes back to another book that we considered, which was Just Mercy, and I'm sure that we'll probably at some point in the future read that book. Just Mercy is a book that talks about, written by a lawyer who defends inmates, and I believe they were falsely accused, or if they weren't falsely accused, they just had like childhoods that were so, like, once you read their story, you could totally understand why they did whatever they did that put them in jail or whatever. Like, I think we're all good. I just do. I believe that. I believe that we play parts that other people don't like sometimes, but it's still for the good. I just believe we're all good, and every time that I've been asked to, I get asked to come remove spirits from houses and things because I can communicate with them. And I have never, in my experience, now I'm not talking about anybody else and what they've experienced. In my experience, even though the person in the household was fearful of that spirit and was interpreting whatever that spirit was doing to communicate, was interpreting that in a quote evil or satanic way, when I get in there and start talking to the spirit, there's nothing evil about it at all. Like, it's just communication. And the suffering that the person living in the house is going through is because they're allowing their fear to like blow this up into something that, like the teddy bear shadow, the that you see as a kid when you're a little kid and you wake up in the middle of the night, you look over and you think there's this big monster, but it turns out to be the teddy bear sitting there. It's just a shadow on the wall. So I think as humans, we just have this these survival, it's built into us, just as a species. Everything here on planet Earth is here to survive, right? I mean, you can look around and see that, because everything adapts to try to keep its life cycle going. And fear is part of staying alive. So the fear is not a bad thing, but when you let it take control of you, then that can lead to a lot of things. So is it possible, that this woman, I don't remember what her name was, Samantha, do you? Is it possible, do you want to read that little section there, since you have the book? I got to get the book so that I can read stuff like this. Maybe read about her.
Are we still talking about the woman in the bomb situation? Is that what you want me to reread again? Okay. So this is in the prologue of the book, and it says, on February 25th, 1969, Christina, a 20-year-old administrative assistant in the Department of Political Science at Pomona College in Claremont, California, went to the department's basement mailbox to pick up her employer's mail. As she touched the package in the mailbox, a bomb detonated, hurling her across the room. Dust and soot filled the air. 6-foot splinters of wood shot like arrows into the cement wall behind her. Flames from the explosion scorched her face, leaving her temporarily blind. The blast severed 2 fingers from her right hand and ruptured both eardrums. And it says that Christina planned this experience before she was born, and she knows why. And so, yeah, that's kind of how the book starts out for us.
So if you can think about the people that you know, or yourself, if you were in that position, you know, there's uncountable ways that somebody could take that situation. Some people would take that situation and be horribly, like, they would never leave their house again, they would never touch a piece of mail again, they would never trust anybody again, they would live in fear, anxiety, and desperation for the rest of their life. Other people would, you know, like she says, oh, well, I planned this, you know, and I know why. And where is it in the book that she actually, where does it talk about that plan? Have you gotten there yet, Samantha?
No, I haven't gotten there yet. I'm not sure which chapter he actually talks about her story, because I think even in the first challenge, or in the first challenge, in the first chapter is when he starts talking about why, and you know, like, why would we do this, and or maybe that isn't the first chapter. Maybe that's actually in this introduction. Oh, I guess it is. So the why we plan challenges and why we incarnate and all of that is still in this first section.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, wait. No, never mind. I'm wrong. Flipping through here. Okay. So no, the first chapter is about the why we do it, and the whole purpose behind, you know, why this concept would make sense. So I'm not sure about her story. It'll probably be in one of the later chapters. So, yeah.
And what does he say about why there, Samantha? Is there a little paragraph or anything?
If I can jump in a second, he says in chapter 7, that you will meet Christina and her spirit guide.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay, yeah, so I was kind of just glancing through here. And we've kind of talked a little bit about this whole aspect of you know, this notion presents a new and radically different way of looking at the world and our purpose in it. And the more traumatic our challenges, the more difficult the concept may be. So, I mean, we've kind of talked about that, and that's at the beginning of chapter 1. And then also his whole thought process on, you know, his purpose in writing the books, not to persuade us of the absolute reality of pre-birth planning, but rather to offer, in the spirit of helpfulness, an idea that might help you in your life if you have been suffering and you've suffered through things. But in this section where it says why we incarnate, let's see, I think kind of there's a whole thing. I think the basic idea of why we incarnate in the first place is that I remember him talking about kind of this idea of experiencing, and that if we didn't have these experiences, we wouldn't even know. Kind of like the difference between hot and cold. If we knew the definition of hot and we knew the definition of cold, sure, we know those definitions, but do we really know what that means? Do we know what hot feels like? Do we know what cold feels like? I mean, we would have no sensation of it, if you will. And so he talks a fair amount about the reason we come here in the first place is so that we can actually experience these experiences for kind of the sake of the experience. Now, he also talks about like learning lessons from it, and kind of looking at our lives as just a big learning experience, on a deeper, like a spiritual growth and that kind of a thing. But I really resonated with this idea of just simply coming here to experience the individual aspects of being human. A while back, Catherine, of course, you were mentioning, when we had this kind of like channeling, if you will. I had an experience not too long ago where I was just kind of like in kind of a really deep meditation, and it was like a light bulb had come on in my head, and I'm like, we are basically, and this is what I experienced, was that we are basically, we talk about God as being, all knowing, all seeing, all present, all everything. And if we were actually all everything, it would be so freaking intense that we wouldn't be able to even experience any individual aspect of any of it. It would just be like the most strong, like in the Bible, they talk about when Moses goes up on the mountain and he sees the face of God, and it's so intense, it just like, blows his mind. I'm like, this is what I kind of had this like vision of it. It's like this extreme pain, pleasure, light, dark, up, down, everything all at once. And it's just like, ah, like that, right? And so if you're experiencing all at once, you don't see up, you don't see down, you don't see pain, you don't see pleasure, you don't see any of it. It's so intense, it's so much, it's so everything all at once, that the reason that we come here to incarnate is simply so that we can put the veil on, so that we can experience each of these individual things as a human, so we can experience what's it like to have long hair and it blows in your face and it's like, God, get out of my eyes, or what's it like to, be a woman and have these like hormonal fluctuations and these emotional roller coasters, and what's it like? I don't know. I wouldn't know if I had it all coming at me so fast I can't even feel any of it. Right. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, that's what resonates with me, because that's kind of a vision that I had. And that explains a lot too, because when we go into our human life and we're looking at it now as if, let's say we didn't know any of this and we're experiencing this horrific thing that happened in our life, and we're like, why in the hell did I have to go through that? And but now we're not in it anymore. And now we are experiencing pleasure in our life, and we're experiencing love from somebody. We're experiencing love from ourselves. We have children, we have a dog, we have all these different things, and we're experiencing peace now. But would we know how peaceful that was if we hadn't had this horrificness that had happened, earlier in our life? And would we appreciate it for what it is? I think that in life we talk a lot about taking things for granted, and if we all of a sudden we lose those things, then we're like, oh dang, that was really awesome, So I think that's kind of what it's all about, and I think that if we kind of look at it in that way also, is that can give us some I don't know if it's perspective or it's just some, oh, okay, I get it now. I mean, how many times have we experienced something in our lives where we've looked back on the situation, and even as frustrating or horrible or annoying or whatever it was, as we can look back on it and be like, oh, okay, well then that makes sense now. I get it. I see why I went through this, because now I'm able to do this. So that's my thought.
Love it. Yeah, you stirred some thoughts in me because as you're talking about the I read a lot about quantum physics these days too, and what we see in our how we're evolved at this point is only 1% of what is actually going on in the world and the universe. There's 99% that we are not even taking in. So, and it's true, if all of a sudden all our desires come true, it would be too overwhelming for our system. And that's, yeah, it's like our experience is like these little, it's just this little window of what is really out there. And it just blows my mind. I forget where, there's this, I think it's somewhere in Europe, I forget, this like quantum physics hub where they're doing all these experiments. And it's just, when I read about them, I have to look it up again. When you read about these experiments, it's like, wow, just mind-blowing of what we don't even perceive that's going on around us constantly. And that's why, you know, meditation is important, or, you know, so that you can almost get into this other dimension that's around us all the time that we don't tap into. When we're meditating and we drop our thoughts, we can actually go into that dimension where the things might speak to us or give us guidance, or we can manifest in this other dimension, because everything's there. Everything is in this field around us if we just tap into it. So it's just fascinating. And then also what you were saying, Samantha, about, you know, like, I guess like there's these polarizations, like good, bad, or, you know, blah, blah. But we don't appreciate, we can't appreciate the good without the bad. We need that lower feeling to be able to appreciate when we have good, because okay, we come into life and everything's good and love, and we may not know that that's all good and everything's great until we have those moments of like, oh no, what's going on? This sucks. And then we can appreciate, like, yeah, we're in this world of polarity that shows us what's good and what to appreciate, and so we can appreciate more after the bad moments. I don't know. Now I'm not making sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he gave this one example in there about, oh, sorry, Dan, I think you were trying to jump out. I apologize. I'll make this quick. He gave an example really of music, when he's talking about the most heavenly music, like that's in your home. You know, your home is the heavenly music. Is that what you wanted to talk about, Dan? From this chapter?
No, but go ahead and finish what you were saying, and then I'll throw my little 2 cents worth in.
Okay, cool. So he's talking about, you know, if you were born in this place and it was just like, there was this just most heavenly music, it was always playing all the time, it's all you ever knew, it's all you ever experienced, you just probably wouldn't even notice, it'd just be like background noise. And but then he gave a couple of examples. He's like, now if you went away from your home and you went to another place and they didn't have that music there, and then you tried to recreate it, then you'd have more appreciation for it, right? Because you know, you're trying to recreate it and you can't put it together, and for whatever reason it just isn't, you know, coming to you, but then eventually you put it together and you're like, oh, I'm so glad I have that music back again. And but then he's like, you can take it a step further. Let's just say, for instance, that okay, this music from home you experience your whole life, but then all of a sudden you get in an accident, you have an amnesia, and you can't even remember the music, but you have this like in your head something. There's something going on that you're missing, and then you feel like it comes through you. This music, it comes out, and then you create it, and it's so amazing and wonderful, and you have like a whole different level of appreciation for this amazing music, and so does the whole world, because it kind of is channeled through you, if you will, and then this creation in this place, and it's just amazing. And so he kind of gives those different examples of why why would we do this if we have this awesomeness? Why would we not want it anymore? But if you don't appreciate it because it's just always there all the time, I think that's why a lot of times we go like on vacation, right? You know, we're at home, the same old mumbo jumbo, and then we go on vacation and we have this whole different experience because, you know, we just want something different, and it's awesome. But then we're there for a while and we're like, gosh, you know, I really miss home. And then when you come home, you just appreciate it more, right? So, okay, Dan, jump out.
Well, it's funny because you ultimately kind of came around to what I was going to say a little bit too. But I think everything that now in how you were talking about that, um, it makes me put uh, Sandy's little bit she put in kind of what you were saying, and the thought I have is also the fact that they say we use only about 10% of our brain, so that 10% of our brain, along that 1% of the quantum physics world that we're interacting with, I wonder if one, like you said, um, in all this, it is to help give us a better appreciation of when we do return back to, for me, going home to God, or for others, going back and being part of the universe and everything like that, to be able to better appreciate that and understand why all that awe is, you know, what it is, and how to better, I'm trying to find the right word. I don't want to say maneuver, but better flow in that realm, um, so that way we can get the most out of everything. And I think by putting the veil on before, it just is so that way we get the true feeling and the true aspect of everything going through it, rather than having that veil open and being able to, oh well, this is just part of, and not taking it for what it is. So we can have that growth experience, or that better understanding, and things like that, for in that. And I can, because like I said, now even in hindsight of some of the things I've gone through, and I spoke about this, what, last week or the week before, some about where my heart is in certain parts of me, you know, and then the book idea that's been in my head maybe the last 6 months, or something that really hit me, and it hit me hard, like, people need to understand this one certain aspect. And because I've never ever really heard anybody ever look at it from this, the point I'm looking at it now. And so, but once again, that fear aspect, and again, I think that's part of that veil being put on, and for that natural, real reaction of some of that, um, you know, to help me either, and that might be part of what my plan is, or whatever, some, to work past maybe part of that fear or something, to ultimately sit down and say, I'm going to write this. Whatever happens comes out of it. Whatever happens, if it's a success is a success. If it's a failure, it's a failure. And it's not maybe so much about that outcome, but getting down and really getting to do it, and making that decision.
Yeah, I don't think it's about failure or success. I think it's just like, I've been told by my guides my whole life I need to write. And one of the things that being in shutdown, has done for me, it's given me time to write. And my energy levels are so much higher now that I'm doing some of the stuff that I came here to do. I think resistance, when they say resistance is futile, uh, that's a very true statement. Like, I think we come here to do certain things, and then once we get here, we decide, oh, we're going to do this over here because we watched some webinar, and it told us that was a good thing to do. So, we go off on this jaunt and off on this jaunt, and but one and like, for the past 18 months or whatever, I did ride share, and there's nothing wrong with doing ride share. And I was kind of like a, I don't know, like, I help people. It was almost like a little mini therapy session sometimes. So it was a good thing to do, but it's not what I came here to do. And during that 18 months, I watched as my energy went down, 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 down to where I really felt like I was just so completely drained. I know that being in lockdown, of course, has given me the opportunity to get more sleep, but I'm not actually getting more sleep. So I can't contribute that to my increased energy level. What I can contribute to my increased energy level is that I am now writing. I am now, and I'm getting huge confirmation in my body right now. I am back to doing, because I was doing these things before, but I'm back to doing what I came here to do. And it's, how they say, when, like, it's not work, if you're doing what you love, you just have an abundance of energy and you can just go for days at a time, and that's so true. And I think it's not necessarily doing what you love so much as it's doing what you said you were going to do when you came here. Like those pre-plans. I'm pretty sure we came to eat, you guys. Like, I don't know. When I'm out of body, and as a child, I don't have active recollection of being pulled there recently, which doesn't mean that I wasn't pulled there, because it may be something I'm experiencing and not remembering. But I do have vivid memories as a child of multiple times I would have what we would call a reoccurring dream, where I was always going to this place. It was kind of like, I don't know if it's like, it kind of looks like the White House or something. Like, it's this big building, which is interesting that it shows up as a building. I think that's something that just makes me more comfortable with it or something, because even though it's a building, we're not actually in the building. There's no walls, but it's a group of souls that would gather together. We were all ethereal. We didn't have body forms, yet I had total understanding that there was another soul right next to me, that we were all gathered there, and we were receiving messages, education. I can't tell you who was teaching us because it was all telepathic, but we were receiving education about the stewardship of Earth. Now, this is as a child, that I was having this reoccurring dream. The other reoccurring dream that I always had was I was this old Oriental woman, and I would be sitting cross-legged, uh, and I would actually levitate up off the ground, and then this voice would come through me, and it was speaking a language that I don't understand. So I have no idea what I was saying, but I was always having this dream. So I should have been open to channelers my whole life, right? Because obviously I'm some form of a channel myself. And I have to tell you guys, because I mentioned this on last week, that many of us that are open tend to dampen ourselves because we don't want to be bombarded with these messages that sometimes we can't turn off. And I ran across this channeler this past week, and I kind of termed him the Reluctant Chandler. He's so like I would be, because while he's channeling, like this voice is coming through him, and he's repeating what they're telling him and everything, but then he's like rolling his eyes like, would you just shut up and let me get back to my life? Like, he's so funny. And I think that, you know and I've mentioned this before, I lived in Boulder, Colorado, which is known to be a very spiritual place. There's a lot of open people that go there, and the energy there is different from any other place that I've been. Now, every place has a different sort of energy signature, but there's something special about that one. I don't know why. But the way I wound up living where I was living there, where I last lived there, was I got invited to a party, and this was all people who were very spiritually open, people who were channelers and psychics and mediums and this and that and the other spiritual teachers. And it gets so freaking boring, you guys. Like, I went to 3 parties. then I lived there for 7 more years and never attended another party because everybody just stood around and talked about how spiritual they were and how much more spiritual they were than somebody else. And it's so boring. So I totally understand why we come here and take on these ridiculous roles just to keep us occupied. Otherwise, we'd be bored as shit.
Oh my God, you're cracking me up. It's so true. Those parties like that are so boring.
I've been thinking about so many different things as different people have been talking, and the last thing that you said, Catherine, there's a man here. He's 83, and I walk with him when we can both feel up to walking. And for some reason, one day he just started to tell me that he had grown up Southern Baptist, and he'd been really restricted, and everything was really tight and so forth. And then he said, when I became 18 and I joined the Navy, I decided to go look around, and I realized that they weren't the only ones who believed they were the only ones. And he said, damn those lying bastards. And, that's pretty much how I have felt, because there's a lot of elitism. And this is what you mentioned too with those parties. If you think that you're part of the only one, or the only one that's true and right, and the only one that's spiritual, I mean, my whole life, my elitism told me that Chandler's psychics, all that kind of stuff weren't spiritual. I mean, where did they get off calling that spiritual? But those are the people, I guess maybe it's Chandler's that I have tended to lean towards, since I had a friend, it's 29 years ago, introduced me to that woman that I talked about last week. And I just appreciate, I appreciate attractive women that I feel like I could be that attractive if I would do all the stuff, And she just happened to be one of those women, and it was easy for me to watch her and to listen to her, and to gain from her some of her ideas. And I'm just so glad that from that experience I went to other experiences. There's a man, Chandler, that I just really enjoy him, because he just seems so wise, and he seems so quick. And I just hope that anybody who would maybe go through one of our videos, like this video where we're talking about these things and about opening up to that, would allow themselves to do that. I mean, I think we all look like a group of normal people that, I had the funnest experience last night. I've got some stuff on SmugMug, and I was going through some of their tutorials, and they've got some new stuff, and there's these two men that did this video in the French Alps, and the one gets in a little, it looks like a little tiny Jeep. It's actually a Volkswagen. I think it's one of the new ones. And there's this really slick looking plane that could obviously only hold one person. And the person in the Volkswagen is pulling the plane, and you look ahead and you look at the Alps that are out there, and you think that guy's going to have to turn around pretty quick, and he's not going to have. There's not going to be any room. And of course, they'd had the warning at the beginning of the video. These are professionals doing this. Don't do this at home. As though I have the French Alps in my backyard. Man, I'd love that. But anyway, he does turn around in time. The plane takes off. Then the plane comes really low. It's just really, really, really interesting. Things I'd like to do and don't begin. I mean, I'm 70 years old. I know that I've never had the nerve to do that kind of thing. The things that I would love so much, that I can feel so much, how much I would enjoy them. So anyway, I'm grateful for all these different people in life and all the different plans that they have. And I recognize that I couldn't fit all that stuff in the 70 years I've had.
I'm glad you referenced the time because we've gone way over. That's the thing. Once we get going, we could just keep going. Jason, I'd love to hear your thoughts, though, and any other final comments before we shut this thing down.
Thanks, Catherine. Yeah, wow. I mean, I can't really add to all of everything that you all said. It's very, very interesting. So I got my mind going for sure, though. I was just thinking, so I'm trying to wrap my head around, all this and the different angles that we're each looking at it from. And so one question I have is so what about the concept of free will and predetermination? And is there a percentage of either or that that, I mean, is there an aspect of any control in this, or are we in this idea that we've already accepted our roles? Are we then coming, being born into this world and then now we're kind of a lost soul and we're trying to find ourselves? And then a lot of the aspects you were talking to me as it spoke to me was, where are we looking for this guidance? Family experience, our experiences as we grew up, or are we looking towards spiritual text for it? Or are we trying to connect with our spirit guides? There's just so much kind of to it. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. But it's all very interesting, and it's great to be here with you all. So thanks a lot. And I hope if there's anyone out there also that's watching this, join us on Saturdays. It's great.
I was going to jump out and say something that I think it was Samantha said last Saturday, that in some of this pre-planning or something like this, she would be the one that would pre-plan stuff, and then she would come down here and say, okay, now I'm going to just screw with y'all and be the one that throws the wrench in everything. So I think, like you said, the free will, I think once we're down here, and in that sense, I'm still wrapping my head around those thoughts myself personally, to come down here, and because of, so to speak, the veil being on of what he says in the book and what you were saying, I think both you and Catherine said it, Samantha, that gives us that liberty, of that availability to throw the wrench in the proverbial plans, therefore making everybody else then having to scramble to adjust their lives to react and readjust and maybe not, and maybe change their plans then too because of that. And that might be part of what this is all about, what this book leads to, and that growing experience to learn and understand better for when we go back. To me, it's going back to God and being, back in that. For others, it might be the infinite intelligence, universe, however they look at it. And for that, and for whatever that next step may be, and that I don't know.
Something that came up for me this past, I don't know, at some point when we were off, not talking on here, but just during my week, I had this thought. I'm like, okay, so let's just say we do all come here, with this plan, and we all choose our roles, and it's like, whose life experience are we living right now? That was kind of a question. Or do we, we come back here so many times, we just take turns being the center of the, like the what's it called in the movies, the main actor. I know there's the star. Okay, the star of the show. That was what I was looking for. Do we just do it so many times and we come back and we each get a time where we get to be the star of the show, and we choose these different roles, and but then sometimes, like what you were saying, Dan, last week I had talked about being the one that wants to stow the wrench in the spoke of the plan, and but yeah, like the bird, exactly, trying to be the star of the show right now. Or are we all just, vying for being the star in this show all at the same time? So that's kind of an interesting concept. But I don't know. I know we'll get into it more as we go along in the book, because it talks a little bit about how, as souls, we choose the roles, and then we also have whoever's life we're going into is how we feel. Like Dan, you were saying, you don't know if you could play the bad guy role, if you will. And but yet there was this one thing in here where one of the stories he was talking about, where one soul is saying, this is the experience I want to have, and then the people who are around him are like, I don't like that idea, but okay, because I love you, I'll do what you need me to do, kind of a thing. So I look forward to having those kind of discussions. So that's all for me this week.
I'd just like to bring up one idea that is, it seems to me that I always look at things as kind of like a practical reason. How can I incorporate this into my life? What is this, what can this really do for me here? How can I make sense of this? And, it seems to me, I've kind of leaned towards the idea that, hey, we're kind of given, the old poker analogy, we've got to play the hand that we're dealt, kind of thing. But some of these things seem like they're not cards that we've been dealt, but cards we've picked up along the way. And so and then there's also this aspect that, you were talking about a God and his universality, that, he's experiencing everything at once. But then in my mind, I see, well, God doesn't take this form. He doesn't experience things like mortals do, doesn't have to experience everything all at once, or is capable of experiencing everything at once with no problem. And so I'm wondering if, when we take these roles, as we're putting it, do we understand that once we are in these mortal bodies, that we're going to have to deal with all these animal instincts and animal feelings or human feelings that we have to overcome? And then that, I've kind of thought that, like, well, the difference between good people and bad people is that the bad people aren't able to elevate themselves over these the animal lust, or the need for greed, or these things that are like come from being human and wanting and needing and that sort of thing. And that those that can't cope with that tend to be the people that we think of as being bad, because they're doing these other things outside of that actually affect other people, rather than being able to just deal with their own selves. And so I kind of think of it. I'm kind of thinking of it that way, just so it's sort of. I'm just wondering about this role situation. If I don't think of it as being harder to be a bad person. You come into this world and you just do whatever you want to do and don't care about how it affects anybody else. And, that seems to me like easier than appreciating life and having respect for, and really trying to understand others and live along with others. So that's where I'm kind of getting a complete kind of an opposite thought about, whether or not we take on a bad role or a good role. But I do believe we all have our own cards that we're dealt with, or that we deal with, or that we're dealt through, while we're growing up, that we have to learn to handle. So maybe there's probably something in there interwoven that pulls it all together for me, but I'm still kind of looking for it.
And it does address that later in the book. Yeah. Come on, Karen.
Cool.
I think it's interesting to me that Jason pointed out that we're all maybe possibly fairly readily psychotic or sociological. I know I'm not getting the words right, rather than point to you and say that's how it is for you. But while you were talking, I was thinking about con men, and I was thinking about the leaders, like the guy that gave his group all Kool-Aid. How there's people with personalities that people just follow so readily and happily, and they know that they're just the best person on earth. Whereas, law enforcement knows these are the greatest evil people that we need to round up before they, kill off a lot of people. Love you, Sandy. I just realize that we do have free will. We have a lot of choice, and we can listen to our guides or not. There's just so much we can do. And I have, during this lockdown, been realizing how I can feel empty in my head in terms of any ideas, and how finally I can get back to where I'm glad to be alive. I have ideas flowing. I have energy, like you were talking about, Catherine. And you're right. It is so, so wonderful. I love all you guys. I tell you, you're my guides, and we thank you.
Well, thank you, God, for giving Karen that I pray for that for you all the time, actually. Yeah. And so that's good. That's so good to hear. And just before I give it to you, Samantha, to close us out, I just want to, people do look for guidance from different things. We absolutely do have free will here, and it does, mess up the plans for different things, and then we have to scramble about or whatnot. But as far as seeking guidance, people seek guidance from different things. Some people do go to spiritual texts. Some people do go to spiritual people, gurus or whatever. Personally, coming in as open as I did as a child, I have just always stuck to going straight to the source, which is my guides. Because my guides, like I talked about in the beginning of this program, My guides are very clear. There's no emotion involved. There's no agenda involved. There's no question about the messages that I receive from my guides. If it's my mind, if I ask a question and my mind is answering, then I doubt that answer that I'm receiving. When I get a message from my guides, it is so clear. And the best analogy that I can leave you with, interestingly enough, is a biblical analogy. And I don't know who it is or where it is. I think it's, I don't know, somebody's in a boat somewhere. There's like a huge storm raging. And then all of a sudden, everything just goes calm. That is the guides. That, and whether you want to call them guides, if the word guides throws you off, call them angels. You know, if the word angels throws you off, you know, call them whatever gives you the most comfort to call them. But their guidance, whoever they are, I don't know. They could be some aliens on a ship somewhere for all I know. I don't know who these people are that talk to me. But when they talk, it is very clear, it's that calm. It's the raging storm is my mind trying to figure shit out. And then all of a sudden something says, oh, just ask. Because I forget. And I talk to guides and God and spirits all the time. And I still forget. I'll be trying to figure some shit out and just being completely overwhelmed. And then I'm like, oh, duh, just ask, you know. And then I'll ask. And then I just get this calm answer. There it is. Bam. And there's never a question. When it really comes from my guides, I never question that because it feels so right. So I hope you guys are enjoying this book. And there's actually another book after this. So if this sort of thought process, if it appeals to you, you know, there's another book you can read after this one. He probably has a bunch of them. I don't know. But I'll give it over to you, Samantha, to close us up. And I just love you guys so much. And I'm so happy for you, Karen.
I love it. All the hearts. Love you guys too. And I just want to thank you all for coming on here. And for those of you who are watching, if you'd like to participate with us, we would absolutely love to have you on here and for you to share your thoughts and your ideas. And because, I mean, every time we share something, then we each learn from it, whether it is a contradictory point of view or if it's a similar point of view and we just need a confirmation. It is all helpful. So we love having you on here, and we look forward to having you join us. So there'll be some links below this video where you can connect with us on our Facebook group, or you can just go to mindsetmasterycollective.com. It'll take you right into our Facebook group where you can ask to join, ask to participate, connect with all of us. And with that, guys, please like this video and share it with anybody you think that would find it interesting. And everybody have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.